I don't want to get to the end of my life and ask that question. I don't want to sit there and say like, oh man, what would I have done if I'd taken that leap? Just tried that other thing. Maybe you fail, but that's okay. Yeah. You know, you can pick yourself up again.
Sure,
it's okay.
For sure.
Yeah.
So this is, I guess, the 10-year anniversary coming up at the end of this year of him passing.
Yeah.
What do you feel like he'd be most proud of you that you overcame over these 10 years? If he were able to watch you and speak to you, I'm sure maybe he speaks to you in other ways, but if he was speaking to you here in this world, what would be the thing he's most proud of you?
I think he'd be proud of the fact that I didn't let fear stop me from anything. You know? Because we talked about that a lot too. You know, this like, it was so scary when he was diagnosed because it really felt like it came out of nowhere. I'm sure other people probably feel that same way, right? Where something disastrous happens and you're like, oh my God, what? You know, nobody's planning for trauma. Nobody plans for disaster. And so I think it's easy and probably excusable if I were to carry on life looking around corners and being scared of what was coming. You know, what if I leave here and something happens to me? What if I find a lump? What if? You know, and living my life sort of caged that way. I don't think anyone would blame me. I don't think anybody would say like, Boz, like you were just wasting your life. Like, stop being so afraid. I don't think of all the experiences in my life, I don't think anybody would tell me that I was living life wrong if I was cautious. And so I think he'd be proud of the fact that I am not cautious. That I'm freer today than I was 10 years ago. That I'm living bigger today than I was 10 years ago. And I hope he would be proud of that.
That's cool. I'm sure he is. I wanted to ask you about what you said about, you know, when you had your child and you realized that your life was completely different. It wasn't like, it's perfect. Everything is perfect the first 2 to 4 years and I have all this love and it's easy. It sounded like you were kind of, you know, resentful a little bit of this experience, right? Which sounds to me is common for a lot of moms. And I've heard a lot of moms think it's going to be one way, and then the first year it's like a slap in the face, and you get 2 hours of sleep a night, and this, and that, and your identity changes, and, which is beautiful, but it's also a grieving part that happens as well, right? It's like you're grieving an old identity and stepping into motherhood, which is, I think there's a lot of women that relate to that. How did you, after his passing, learn to, I guess, embrace it in a different way or have a different relationship with motherhood? Or do you still have that same kind of feeling from 10 years ago? You know, how did you experience it?
Oh, man. Well, I mean, everything was so dramatic at the time that even my own thought of motherhood changed dramatically. You know, I do remember the moment it happened. I was sitting...
Like your mom, you shift your relationship to motherhood?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I remember it's very, very clear to me. Lael was 4 when Peter died. And I was sitting in our bed, and it was like shortly after the funeral, and, you know, people had gone home, and it was super quiet. I was still on bereavement leave. And Lael had climbed into my bed, you know, was sleeping next to me. And I remember like looking at her and just thinking like, oh my God, I have to do this by myself.
Wow.
You know, and the terror of that. Because again, in all honesty, Peter was the one who wanted children. I wasn't sure I wanted kids. You know, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh, okay. So you decided, you left. and left me here. You know what I mean? And left me here with her. What am I supposed to do now? And looking at her and feeling that terror and anger and confusion, uncertainty, and thinking, God, she's 4. Like, I got to do this for a long time by myself. And also feeling like I didn't have the answers, you know, feeling like I was ill-prepared for it. And so I did probably what mothers shouldn't do, and I shook her awake.
She was asleep.
Oh, she was asleep. It was the middle of the night. She was asleep.
You woke her up?
I woke her up. Yeah, woke her up.
What did you say
as I look at her, And I was like, and I didn't know what to say, but I just looked at her and she's like sleeping and looking like, yes, Mom, all innocent looking. And she's got these big doe eyes and she's like looking at me all sweetly. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing.
You said this to her?
Yeah, I'm saying this to her. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Wow.
And she's looking at me and clearly uncomprehending, right? And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing and I need your help. I need your help.
Wow.
And she's like, okay.
Is this a dream? Is this about waiting?
She's like, okay. And I was like, I need you to tell me whatever you need. I need us to communicate, okay? Because I don't know how to figure out how to do this. So we're going to do it together.
Wow.
And all she said was, okay, Mommy. And she went right back to sleep.
Wow.
And Louis, I'm telling you, that was the moment. That was the moment everything changed for me. Because the thing is, I think before that, I had seen her as like a responsibility, like I was supposed to step into this role of motherhood and like have the answers and know the thing and lead the way, But that moment, I just felt so inadequate and so lost. And the one person who I felt could help me was the person I'm supposed to be responsible for. And so it changed our relationship because even at 4, at that point, literally the next day, I was like, okay, now look, here's what's going on. What do you think of this? You know what I mean? And it became more of a partnership in raising her than me having all the answers all the time. It also freed me from having to always be perfect. That like I could grieve in front of her and I could be confused in front of her. And I could say, I don't know. What do you think? Or like when, a few years later, things got super busy and I was not available and, I'm running around and other people were critical of the fact that like, I'm like this working mom who's out in the world all the time and where's my kid, And like I could go to her and say like, hey, so what do you think about this? Are you upset with me? Is this terrible? Is it a terrible experience? You know what I mean?
Right.
And
get feedback.
Yeah, and also give her the power to tell me. It dynamically changed the way we are. And now she's 13 and a half and has a very big say in how we are and what we do. And she's just such a blessing. She's a wonderful person. And I would absolutely be her friend if I wasn't her mom.
Wow.
Like I love her not just because I'm supposed to. I love her because she's an awesome human being. And I really value our relationship.
Wow. What's the biggest lesson she's taught you?
Oh, man. That you don't have to be perfect in order to do a good job. I'm certainly not a perfect mother, I'll tell you that. But she tells me all the time how great I am. I wasn't home for my birthday, just this birthday I celebrated, and she wrote me a text and just with gratitude, she was just like, thank you so much for everything that you do. And I was just like, man, let me brush my shoulders off. You know what I mean? So yeah, you don't have to be perfect to be really great.
Yeah. You're in this transition phase now, right? Because you left your previous role at your career. When was that?
Gosh, February last year.
So almost a year.
Yeah.
So you've been in transition from essentially going to the biggest companies and speaking and writing books and all these different things that have happened for you to essentially pausing, making the next jump, making the next decision, and going bigger in the career aspect. Obviously, you got an amazing book out, but what have you learned in a year of pausing, making the decision on what to do next in terms of career? Obviously, you're making other life decisions and taking care of your health, and I see you doing all the things and living your best life all over the world that you do, and all your Instagram is great. But in terms of like career decision making, what have you learned in this last year that you could share for others who might be in a transition, trying to figure out, I feel like I got to make a decision?
I felt like the last 10 years of my life have all been really big changes and really big jobs and, some risk and like all the things we've talked about, that have led me to bigger and bigger and bigger. Ambition has driven me, very much so.
Yeah.
Along with my gut. But it's been like, just, okay, got to do this and do that. And there's lots of headlines and lots of press and first to do this and first to do that, lots of those. And stepping away from all of that, I had to consider my ego,
Yes.
putting that in check, because it was the first thing that assaulted me. You know what I mean?
Before the interview continues, if you feel like you're not living your most authentic life, not leaning into your purpose, and not living the life that your future self would be extremely proud of, I've written a new book called The Greatness Mindset, and I think you're gonna love this. Through powerful stories, science-backed strategies, and step-by-step guidance, The Greatness Mindset will help you overcome all the different challenges in your life to design the life of your dreams and then turn it into your reality. Make sure to click the link below in the description to get your copy today. Okay, let's get back to this video.
That first thing that made me think like, oh, but gosh, who am I without that title? Do people still like me?
What's my identity?
Look, okay, does the phone stop ringing? People stop asking you for favors and asking you to dinner?
Interesting.
And sometimes that happens.
It happens when
Just
you're not in that
FYI.
position.
When you're not in
anymore.
that position, people will stop calling you.
Stop inviting you.
Oh man, okay?
Stop needing you.
All of the things. And so then, it's like the addiction to that kicks in, right? And having to figure out like, okay, do I want another job because like I like the work? I like the thing that I'm doing? Or is it my ego? Am I trying to fulfill other people's expectations of me? Do I feel less than because I don't have this thing? That's been a tough one. It's been a tough lesson. I had no idea that lesson existed before I stepped away. And by the way, I wasn't even expecting it. Because look, I think the last thing somebody would say about me is that I'm not confident. But look, there have been plenty of times I've been sitting there like, ooh, but how, really? Like, am I really as great as I think I am?
Really? In the last year?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Lots of moments like that where I'm just like, well, if I was so good, maybe I could just turn around and get another C-suite job somewhere, show them. But who am I showing?
Yeah.
Who
are you proving?
Who am I proving it to? And do they really matter? Do they really, really matter? And so I felt like that was my ego working on me versus like what is actually good for me in my life. At this moment in time, as I am evolving as a human, evolving as a mom, evolving as a partner, evolving as a friend, as a daughter, as a sister, even as a leader, like there's big evolution happening in my life.
Yes.
And I had to realize that some of that motivation was based on ego and not based on what I actually need in my life.
Which is what?
Which is my own pursuit to get to my destiny. My ego stopping me from doing that. Because it's so easy to slip back into the thing that's comfortable. And some people would say that like, oh, well, a C-suite job is not comfortable. I can guarantee you it's tough as hell. But it is what I know.
It's familiar.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
So yeah, there's some comfort in that.
Yeah.
There's comfort in that.
How does someone know when they're being led by their ego versus a more meaningful mission? That is what their destiny is pulling them to do versus what their ego says, this is going to make me look really good or prove people wrong.
Yeah. Well, that's just it. I think it's the why. Why do you want it? And being really honest with the answer.
Yeah.
Because like, look, I had some offers after I left Netflix, people who reached out, and that felt good, I didn't go pursue anybody. I wasn't like, oh, look, I'm available. Here's my resume. People are calling me and saying like, oh, so I just heard you left. Have you considered X, Y, and Z thing? Come over here. Entice.
Give me this stock option.
Yeah,
we'll give you this signing bonus and this.
Yeah,
and you'll get this title, the press.
Yeah, oh my God, it's going to be fabulous, And yeah, it was very tempting. And I was also sick and tired of people saying like, oh, we know you've got an announcement coming. We're waiting for you to say what you're going to do next. I know it's going to be big. Oh, God, I was tired of that too. And so I had to stop and ask, well, why do you want this, Boz? Why do you want this? Why do you want this job? And being really honest, because you can lie to yourself too a lot, right?
100%.
It's like, oh yeah, no, I need it because, I haven't worked in this industry before, and I'm going to learn something new in this job. And I've always wanted to work with this person.
It'd be great for my resume. It'd be great for this. Yeah.
I could get this other title and, you know, I'm going to break this boundary and, oh my God, aren't I such an inspiration? You know, you can lie to yourself and tell yourself like, oh yeah, these are the reasons why. Oh man, but then you gotta, at least for me, I had to really unpack that.
Yeah.
And sit and say, no, for real, like you lying, girl, you know you're lying.
Yeah, when you look in the mirror and you actually ask yourself, am I doing this for the right reasons?
Am I doing this for the right reasons? And no, I don't need another experience like that. I've had enough.
Yeah, 6 or 7 of them is enough.
I mean, seriously, you know, and like, look, yeah, I would say it's somewhat embarrassing, or I felt embarrassed when people would say like, oh, so what are you doing now? And I would say, well, I'm on a break. And they would look at me in confusion and be like, but why? You know what I mean? Or like feeling like, oh, shoot, I didn't even get invited to that dinner, you know, and knowing that, oh, it's because I don't have a title that people can work off of or trade in for some kind of value.
How have you learned to, like, again, by no means are you not as relevant as you were a year ago or something with the title, but with the feeling of, oh, I'm not getting as much maybe as a year ago of calls, although you're still getting lots of opportunities and people are calling you, but just that feeling of not being as relevant, or maybe I won't be relevant if I don't do this in the next 2 to 3 years. How are you addressing that internally?
Yeah.
Around relevancy or audience, or, you know, being in the press as much as you're used to.
Yeah.
Because I know actors deal with this, with like having this pause season. And, well, my audience isn't growing. I'm not getting announcements. I'm not doing the red carpets. I'm not doing the things.
Ugh, that's a really hard one, Louis. Because here's the truth of it, right? Which is that I'm a competitor. You know, natural competitor,
You're a
been
winner.
an athlete. Yes, always been like, and look, I haven't necessarily been competing against other people, although sometimes I have been, but also competing against myself, you know, because I set those bars and I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna go do this now. You know what I mean? And then winning at that and feeling like, yeah, I did that. Yeah, I crushed it, you know? And I have, to some degree, felt that way about this transition too. If I'm being totally honest about it, which is like, okay, yeah, I can step away from corporate life and crush something else. I'm gonna go do this. You know, being an author is something new. And it's like, I'm gonna win at that. But then I would call it a moment of panic, probably over the holidays. You know, it's like this moment is quickly approaching of like, oh, the book's gonna be out, and then what?
What's next?
And then what?
Right.
What happens? You know what I'm saying? So
They don't have a plan.
yeah. Okay. Now, what do I crush next? What happens? You know? And am I ever going to crush it? You know? Like there's that uncertainty, and the way that I'm sort of managing it, if there's a way to manage it, is that I'm thinking about the phases in my life. You know, and thinking about, like, you know, when you sit and look backwards and you look at the inflection points and you can appreciate them, you know, and you say, okay, when this happened and then, ooh, everything changed, right? And I am trying to be mindful of the fact that I'm in one right now. This very moment is one. And so.
And when you look back 10 years ago to with what you went through, there
insane.
was a lot of lessons and blessings and opportunities that came from the pain, the trauma, the tragedy, the suffering.
Yes.
That you wouldn't be where you're at without 10 years ago those things happening.
At all. And so in those moments, and truly, this is what happened when I got panicked and I was like, ooh, girl, then what do you do? You know, the book comes out, then what? You know, and I'm just like, wow, but like, think of what will happen in 10 years from now when I look back at this moment and think like, oh, you know what happened after that? You know, so just continuing to be open and being intentional about that. So the urgency in my life now isn't like, you know, how can I like crush this next opportunity and just like make this pivot be the best pivot ever? And, you know, people are going to be so inspired by the fact that I moved and did this and did that. I'm so brave. It's like, no, my urgency is in actually just being present, you know, in this very moment in time and feeling like, wow, like there's so much to be thankful for the opportunity to change.
Yeah.
You know, for the opportunity to do something new. become somebody else.
Absolutely.
Find a different title. There's no definition for how you're supposed to live your life. And I think that's also the other beautiful thing. You know, the fact that like no one has ever been where I am before.
Nice.
Not a person on the planet. You know, and so it's like, why would I subscribe to the steps somebody else thinks I should be ordered for me?
Right.